kind of mechanism.
Giuliano,
so
we're
I'm very
seeing
glad to be here. This is the second year
Giuliano, we are seeing you
in this conference.
Not the right screen.
And I have a lot of friends that putting a lot of effort to create this kind of online event. So then before to kick off my session, I would like to say a big thank you to our sponsor to make this event possible. And few words about myself.
Could you please full your screen?
Architect.
Luca, is it okay if you can do a full screen?
Yeah.
It's possible to make it full screen. I think the bottom, the PowerPoint EHC is running. Yeah.
Sorry, let me just change headset. I think I have a problem.
Can you hear us now?
Device settings. So I'm going to set now this one. Can someone say something so I can figure out?
Can you hear us now?
Can you hear us now?
It's working. Yeah. Sorry for the inconvenience. I'm going.
No issues. And your other screen was showing up with the presenter mode, not the actual full screen mode. So
okay.
Yeah.
I got it. Yeah. So let me to share this one here.
Yeah, super. Yeah. Now it's fine. Everything fine.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So then let me just go back to the sponsor view just to give this shout out to the sponsors. So yeah, going back now to the presentation. Yeah, I have been awarded 4 times in a row as a Microsoft MVP for the Office development category. I love to share my knowledge with the community when I have the possibility. So if you want to stay connected with me, if you have questions, feel free to reach me out on Twitter. And before the pandemic crisis, I started to work proactively on my YouTube channel. And here there is the link, so you can find currently 155 videos around Microsoft 365 and Azure. And it's aimed at developer, IT pros, and end users. I hope that you can give it a try. And if you find the content useful, please consider to subscribe. I am also the author of this nice bot, which is available in the Teams store. And it's totally free, and it helps you to automate tasks. You can send email, you can create tasks in Planner, or you can ask several information, for example, who is my manager, and so on. I was born and raised in Italy, but since 6 years now I'm living in Germany. Okay, let's go now with the agenda. So I'm going to show you the webbook world, and we are going to see all capabilities, and then I'll show you 2 demos, and then we are going to wrap up the session. Okay, now let's start to analyze webhooks. So if you are not familiar with webhooks, webhooks, it's a mechanism that notify someone, a user or an application, on a change. And in Microsoft 365, it's available in SharePoint and in Microsoft Graph. Now, here, as I mentioned just some seconds ago, webhooks are a way to get notified when something changes. It's pretty cool, this mechanism, because in the past we are used to work always with a pull model. So every X time, every X minute, every X hour, there was a job or a task that ran and read the source or the data that where we wanted to collect the data. Now, this is a very, I would say, second version of this kind of approach, because instead of having a pull model where every time I have to query the source to grab data, I have the push model. So this time is the source that directly send to the client, send to me an information that there is something new. So something is changed. So then it's good to check in the source and grab the data to display the new data to the end user. Now this model is used from a lot of services. We have an example here: WordPress, GitHub, MailChimp, and so on. And it was first made available in OneDrive and Outlook, and then now it's you know, I would say several times that it's available in SharePoint as well, and then in Microsoft Graph. Microsoft Graph, it's cool because Webhooks. Now, moving forward, I show you how you can subscribe to a webbook, because if you want to get notification, before to start, you have to subscribe. That means in the case of Graph, here we have an example of Graph, you have to consume this endpoint. You have to send an HTTP request, a post request, and let me use here the laser pointer so I can point out. So in this way, you can say to Microsoft Graph, look, I want to subscribe to the webbook, and then you have to specify in for which thing you want to subscribe. So in this case, it's a list. It's a SharePoint list. Now let's see how is the payload of the body of this HTTP request. Here we have in the body, when you subscribe, just few information. We have the resource, we have the notification, and we have the expiration date time. Now it's important here to differentiate SharePoint with Graph, because if you subscribe directly to SharePoint for a document library, for a list, in order to get notified when a user upload a document, change an existing document, or delete a document, for example. Same thing for list. So adding new item in the list or modifying a list item. This trigger a webhook, and the webhook is sent through your service to your application. Then this is important. We have a property here, notification URL, and here you have to define the service where you want to get notified. This could be an Azure function, a web API hosted on Azure or in Amazon Web Service, wherever you want. And for SharePoint, you have an expiration date of maximum 6 months. But what this means? It means that after this period, the subscription is cancelled, so your service will not get notified. That means that you have to put in place a mechanism, for example, a time trigger, an Azure function time trigger that run every day, and consuming the URL of the subscription is able to check the expiration date. And if the expiration date is coming, it's near, this service can automatically update the subscription to additional 6 months. So you are sure that the subscription will be never cancelled, and you don't have service breaking service. Now, let me move on. But before to jump in the next slide, let me just open another parenthesis. So as I mentioned, you have this expiration date for SharePoint. For Graph, it's quite different. So there is a maximum expiration time range of three days. So I know this is not a lot of time, but I think that Microsoft is trying to improve this thing. But you have also to think about that Microsoft Graph API are accessed worldwide, everywhere, and there is a huge infrastructure behind. So Microsoft has to keep care about performance. If every every user in the world subscribe to a webhook in a Microsoft Graph API. This is so you need a huge infrastructure behind to deliver good performance, and that's the reason why Microsoft has to be sure that a subscription is really active, so it's working. Otherwise, it's cancelled, and so in this way, Microsoft can ensure that the service and the API are working very well. Now let's move to the next slide, and let's see now the second step. Let's say that I sent the first post, HTTP post request to make a webhook subscription. Microsoft 365 sent back to my service a validation token, a random string in text plain, and I have 5 seconds. My service better has 5 seconds to send back this validation token to Microsoft 365. When this happens, the subscription is confirmed, and again, Microsoft 365 send back to my application the confirmation and the ID of this subscription. This is very important because if you plan to have a scheduled task, an Azure function that run every day, you have to use exactly this ID to extend the expiration date. And then here there is the notification URL. So this is the URL of my service that will get webhook, and then the resource. This could be SharePoint or Microsoft Graph and so on. Now let's see what happens when a user changes something in, let's say, in a document library. So let's say that upload documents. Microsoft 365 start to send me a webhook. So and this is the payload that my service receive. It's an array. It's a JSON. Basically, it's an array with this kind of information. I have the subscription ID. I have the client state. This is what you have to define, the client state. So when you subscribe, when you send the first request, you can even add this property client state that only you know. So that means that here you can add your GUID that you can generate, and when Microsoft 365 send you a webhook, will send you back this ID, so you know that your service is getting a request from a resource where that is using the GUID that you define. So this helps you to elevate the security of this service. Then you have expiration date, the resource, the tenant ID, the site URL. So in the case of SharePoint, this is the top site of my SharePoint tenant. Otherwise, you will get sites and Contoso and so on. And in the resource, you have the GUID of the list or the document library. Again, when you get a webhook from Microsoft 365, you have to send back an HTTP 200 OK to Microsoft 365, and you have always 5 seconds. Otherwise, the subscription is cancelled. So this because Microsoft monitor and want to be sure that your service is up and running. But don't worry, because if your service is down for some seconds or 1 minute, 2 minutes, there is a mechanism that helps you to keep running your webhook subscription. We will see later. Now let's see this first demo. I want to show you a demo about Microsoft Teams. Let me go now on my team. This is that I have here. Let me close this one. This is the Let me check in the chat. Yeah. Maybe there is some. Can someone talk? I received just there is some issue. Or maybe Brat in the chat.
You're audible. We can hear you.
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yeah, perfect. I just got a call from one of the organizer, so probably, yeah, it was an issue. Okay, so then let me jump now on my team and I'll show you this demo. Let me go here on Webbook. So what I have here, this is an Azure function. It's running. I already deployed this function in my Azure environment. Now the idea here is to make a change in team. So let me open team so we can better understand what I am talking about. Now I subscribed to a webbook to Microsoft 365, more specific to a Microsoft 365 group. So because I want to get notified when a user change something. So let me just go on this team, for example, and let me go on edit team. Now, here I have the privacy. What I'm gonna do now is changing the privacy of this team, and I'm going to set public now. But I can change every other kind of information, the sensitivity label, the description, or the title. But in this case, I'm going to show you that when the user change the privacy of a team from private to public, my Azure function will receive a notification, will receive a webhook, and then will send an email to every owner of the team informing him, her, that there is a service that monitor. This is an example of a test that I made this morning. So this is the email that the service sent to me because I'm owner of the team. And here I got this message: your change of privacy setting from private to public is not permitted due to our company policy. The setting has therefore been reset to private. So now, of course, for this kind of user scenario, there is sensitivity labeled, so you can avoid that people change the privacy of a team. But this is just to give you an overview. It's not just the privacy, it's also when a owner adds new member, it's a nice way to keep track everything, or maybe if the user adjusts some other setting or create a private channel. So you have this great ability to get notified, and you can monitor every user activity, so you can trigger other processes and so on. Now let me go in Visual Studio Code, and here this is another example. Let me go in this other. So normally when I deal with Microsoft Graph API, but also with other API, I use this nice extension that tell me which kind of subscription I have in place. So for example, if I consume this endpoint, graph.microsoft.com subscription, if I send this HTTP request, I got this response, and this tell me that let me zoom a little bit so you can see better. So you get this kind of response. I have the ID of this subscription. This is a generic subscription for groups. So for every change type updated, but you can add insert, updated, or delete. So you will get notified in every of these kind of change. Then you have, so here I've specified groups. So this means that it impacts all groups in Microsoft 365. Then there is the notification URL. This is the Azure function that will get notified when someone change something. And then here I have other example because I use this extension for every other endpoint. Just let me show you here this other endpoint, which is the one that I use to subscribe. So here I made a test locally, and so there are some trick to test webbook locally. So you can use ngrok, so you can expose a public URL outside, and Microsoft 365 can send to this URL every webbook. This is what I sent, so I specified that I want to get notified every time that change something in the Office 365, in the Microsoft 365 groups, and here there is the here I specified for this subscription the groups and even the ID of the group. So in this case, I will get notified only when this Microsoft 365 group will be changed. So, and that's it. Then you have this subscription up and running. And every time that you query the this endpoint list subscription, you will see every time the list of all subscription that you have in place and also the expiration date. Now, I guess I made a deploy to correct a bug this morning. I hope that I think that this was not succeeded. I think there is maybe an error, but let me just jump immediately on my Azure environment so we can see if the subscription is landed in my Azure function. This is my Azure function, and there is this monitor section that tell you if the Azure function is running or not. So this is basically the webbook that I received. Yeah, probably there was an issue, but anyway, so this is exactly the webbook that I received from Microsoft 365, and this is the group. And so maybe I can even simulate this in locally. Let me run my function locally. Okay, so let me run this function. Let me go in Visual Studio so I can show you also how it works locally, this stuff. Then I will use this thing, and here I will just add in the body. Okay, so now I will send this this payload to my Azure function locally. So let me save and let me click on send request. So now let's see if this function trigger. So let me stop and run again. I think it's the breakpoint is not working. I have too many things running here. Let me close something. So I think it's also better for you so we can see better step by step what is happening in the Azure function in this way going in the bug. But basically, before the function start running, I can show you what I have here. So here I get a graph token to query Microsoft Graph, and no, this is not correct. I have here a test that I made before. Yeah, that's the reason why it has not worked my Azure function. There was here this parameter that I valued with hard-coded payload JSON. That's the reason why it does not work. I will publish again this version of the Azure function. So now should work also the function on Azure, but let's make another test. So basically the function get the body, the payload body that Microsoft 365 send with the webhook, and then there is the, so here I collect and I get the resource of the webhook. Then I query always Microsoft Graph to collect every owner of the team where the change is happened, and then I send the email to every owner. So I have a class, util class here, and the graph class. I'll show you. I have not used SDK. I like much more to perform a query like that. So I have the post and I send directly the endpoint and the data. I have this kind of thing because I prefer to read the documentation and use the endpoint that I have in the documentation. It's more clear for me working in this way. Then I send an email to every owner so I can inform them that the change is triggered, and then I set the privacy to the previous status, which is private. So I think that now I hope that the function is running. Yes. No, it's not running. Let me. But I made a deploy, so maybe I can make another change for another team, so we can see in the if the Azure function trigger again. Let me go on marketing, edit team. I'm going to change the privacy of this team. Let me set to done. Okay, now I changed the privacy. Let me just go back here on the Outlook, and let's see if the email comes. In the meantime, let's see if the function is running, so I can show you also how it works locally. Not yet. You can do it. Come on. We are almost there. Let me jump on Visual Studio Code and let's see if I can send this payload to the local Azure function, and let's see if this trigger. Yeah, it's triggered now. There's no validation token, is null, so then my Azure function doesn't need to send back the validation token because the subscription is already up and running. Now the function is getting a valid token, so we can move forward to the next step and can query Microsoft Graph API. Let me just jump on. Maybe here I think it's better, but I have to check this thing if the visibility of the group is changed. So I used the resource parameter to query Microsoft Graph API. So I added just what was available as property in the JSON groups and the ID. So then I got exactly the team where the change is happened. Then the visibility here is changed to public. Then we are in this branch of the if, and then let me move on. So here I add all owners, which are, I guess, only one. Then I use always the Graph API to collect the email of the user. And then let me play again so we can see that the email will land on. And here we go. This is the email just got. There's owner of team legal, you change of privacy. So you can then configure as you prefer your Azure function or your service. So let me move on. I think we have to speed up here because I spent a lot of time. So which kind of events are supported with Webhook? Speaking about SharePoint, add, delete, update, when a user add an attachment in the list, when there is a check-in, check-out, uncheck and check-out, file move, file convert, and version delete. For Microsoft Graph API Webhooks, we have all this entity which is currently supported. Even chat messages in Teams. There is something in beta that is coming, so you can even get the presence of the user. So you can notify a service when a specific user is online or not, which is pretty cool because this give us the ability to extend always more Microsoft 365 with our services. So as I mentioned before, even if your service is down for some seconds or 1 minute, let's say that you need to make a restart of your Azure function or your web API, there is this mechanism, retry mechanism, where Microsoft 365 try to send to your service 5 times with 5-minute interval the same webhook. So in this way, even if your service is down for some second or minute, the subscription is not cancelled. The webhook is extremely secure. No sensitivity information are sent. As we have seen before, you have just information like the tenant ID and which kind of resource, if this is a group or if this is a SharePoint list or document library and so on. But exactly the change is not added in the webhook. So it's your service that has to use the attributes sent in the webhook to read the SharePoint list or to read the Microsoft 365 group to check what has been changed. It's extremely easy to use. You don't need 10 or 8 years of experience in SharePoint. Every developer can deal with webhook and our poor REST HTTP REST. Then let's move to another way that you have to consume webhook, and it is the event hubs. And with the event hub, you can, instead of running and expose a public URL as an Azure function or a web API, you can use the Azure Event Hub to collect all webhooks and then send to your service these webhooks. Now, this of course has an extra cost because first of all, you need an Azure subscription, of course, and then you have to create this resource, these Azure Event Hubs, and this, of course, it doesn't come for free, so you have to spend money. You can improve this kind of mechanism by using Azure Event Hubs, but then you have to be aware that, of course, this has a cost, additional costs. Now, what happens when I want to renew a subscription? So as I mentioned, for SharePoint, you have maximum 6 months, and for Graph 3 days. So you need just to use a patch request. For SharePoint, you have to use this endpoint. You have to specify the list ID or the document library ID, and then you have to add the subscription ID. Once you've done this, the subscription is automatically renewed for additional 6 months. So in this way, you can work without any problem. What kind of service? You can use, for example, a Logic app or an Azure function, a time trigger that run every day and check every subscription that you have, check the expiration date if something is coming to expire, for example, 1 day before, 2 days before. You have the ability by consuming this REST API, by consuming this HTTP request to extend the subscription with the webhook. Now I'll show you something that is very actual, is Viva Connections. So let me just now open the demo environment. I have here this cool application that it's called Let's View, and allows me to share what I have on my mobile phone. Let me just share here my phone. Here we go. Now my phone is online, and let me just close this up and let me open Microsoft Teams. Here I have Microsoft Viva Connections. There was already a session about this topic. This is absolutely new and fresh as topic, and so I wanted to demo this kind of thing. So what I have here is this is the dashboard of Viva Connections in my mobile phone, and I have here an adaptive card. This is a SharePoint framework solution, and basically this SharePoint framework solution get notified every time I change something in the document library. Now let me go in my demo environment and I show you here what I have. So I have for this dashboard, I will not show you everything because we have very few time now. We don't have a lot of time. So, but I configured this dashboard here to get notified every time someone change something in this document library. This is the classic document library. Here I have several files here. I'm going now to open this one, and I'm going to change something here. So let me just add a title here. I can type something here, BMV. Now I saved this this parameter, the title for this document library. Now I should see coming a notification here for this adaptive card. Let me open again, and here we go. So here I got this notification on my Android device because something is changed. And if I click on the view to open this, I can see that the user, me in this case, has changed the file electric auto docx, and it was edited. So here, of course, I can also display more information about this file, but this was just a nice sample to how you can deal with Webhook. And so this dashboard was not updated because this is opened from a lot of time. Probably the session is ended. But if I make a refresh here and if I try to change the document, also, let's say another document here, I'm going to add cool stuff. Then now this parameter is changed as well. This is still loading the adaptive card, so then will not get notified, but I can trust me, and it works also here in the desktop version of Viva Connections. Okay, let me wrap up now the session. Again, thank you to our sponsor and the organizer to make this event possible. It would be great if you can provide a feedback to my session. So here there is the QR code, so you can scan the QR code, or I will just add this URL in the window chat of Teams, so you can provide your feedback. It's very great for me to get an insights if the session was good, if the content was interesting for you, or maybe if I have to change or fix something. And then again here, as a last slide, I have some resources about me, some reference here. Again, my YouTube channel, my blog, my Twitter account. I am very active also on GitHub. I have 60 repository, and you can find also the this sample. Now let me just add the URL in the window chat so you can provide more easily your feedback if you want. It would be very appreciated. Okay, I guess that's all from my side. I don't know if we have still some minute. If we have, I can demo again the another probably always something in the Viva connection. But if we don't have additional time, I think we can close here. Can someone tell me?
Yeah, we don't have time. So if anybody has any questions, they can put it in the chat. Meanwhile, the next speaker is getting ready for the session in another 4 minutes. Thank you. It was a wonderful session, and we will look forward for the feedback. The feedback link is just now shared on the chat.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Thank you again to everybody. I'm here to answer a question if you have.
Thanks a lot, Luca. That's a fantastic session.